Everyone I speak with says they want to lead soldiers, but talk is cheap and their actions don't back it up. And when people head down to AOSB, they get found out, or if they make it through to Sandhurst, they end up falling short. In this video, I'm going to dissect exactly why you may not be ready to lead soldiers. We'll break down the different levels of leadership, where people are going wrong, and most importantly, how to fix it. Leading from the front is not just a slogan, it's a reality. Let's get into the video. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. This video has been inspired from many conversations I've had with people over the past year or so that are trying to get down to AOSB or trying to get ready to lead soldiers, right? So that making it to Sandhurst is the goal here, but obviously being a competent officer thereafter. Today is about uncovering exactly why 50% of people fail AOSB. That's thousands every single year that are not making it through and being able to have the career that they want. That's a lot of people. And it often comes down to leadership. Okay, very quickly, for anyone new, my name is Dan. I'm a former infantry officer and founder of the Future Leader Academy, which helps people develop the confidence, competence, and character to not just be successful at AOSB or successful at Sandhurst, but actually develop the leadership potential so that you can be successful on the course and have a successful career thereafter. We are essentially the first building block in their preparation. But in short, I spend my life developing leadership potential in others. And these are some of my key takeaways. First off, we're going to start with 4 levels of leadership. Now, if you Google levels of leadership, there will be lots of different answers. The 4 levels of leadership come down to what I know, which is military doctrine, right? So we are going to look at this through a military lens. Quite obviously, I'm going to talk about what I know. The first level of leadership is self. If you can't lead yourself, then you cannot lead others. It is as simple as that. This is the first pillar. Number 2 is team leadership. In the military, we look at a team of anyone between 2 up to about 150 people. So we're looking at anything above a pair, right up to, yes, section, platoon, and a company level. Or if you're outside of the infantry, then a squadron. We also refer to this as direct leadership, but more to come on that in a second. Number 3 is organizational leadership. Okay, if we use this military context again, we are now going up to a battalion strength, all right? So a battalion consists of hundreds and hundreds of people. Let's say when I was in anywhere between 700 to 1,000 people, right? So it's a lot of people. At this point, this is where a hierarchy is super important. The army is a very hierarchy-based organization. I get that at all levels, and we'll come on to that in a second in more detail. But if we look at this organizational leadership, there has to be, just because there's so many people. So it is unlikely that a commanding officer, a colonel of a battalion, knows every single person by name, but you would very much expect the officer commanding a company, so a major who's in charge of the company commander, he should know, and he will know, or they will know, of every soldier by name in their unit, okay, or in their subunit rather. So that's kind of the difference here, is that's what we mean by direct leadership. And then organizational leadership, we start to lose that direct impact. You are going to have to lead through leading with others, okay? You're going to have to trust people underneath you, i.e. company commanders, platoon commanders, to go and deliver that leadership for you, okay? So yes, you're still a leader, but it works slightly differently. And the 4th and final level of leadership is strategic leadership. This is going to be the generals. This is going to be the very top brass making the big decisions that then guide the army in whichever way it goes. They're going to be linked into a lot of policy at the top, as in political level, strategic, what the UK is trying to achieve, and then how that gets filtered down to the units, i.e. all the battalions, etc. Okay, so they're the 4 different levels of leadership. If we just break this down in terms of a school environment, obviously you've got the pupil, that's yourself, and then you've got the team. And in a army context, that could be about a platoon strength. Typically, if you're joining as an officer, you're going to be quite passionate about that platoon leadership because that is your job. You are a platoon commander. But that's not too dissimilar to a school class, right? A teacher, a form tutor or whatever, being the leader of that form class. Then at secondary school, you'll probably have your entire year group. You'll know everyone in your year group, right? You'll know everyone in your class really well, but you'll also know everyone in your year group. Maybe not as well, but you'll know them right by name and you'll be able to have a chat with them, whatever. That is essentially what a company is in an infantry unit, or a squadron is in a non-infantry unit. That is essentially what that is. So you're expected to be able to have that direct relationship. Once we go to an organizational level, i.e. a battalion, a regiment, you could even argue at this stage, that's where it's more like the entire school. You're not going to know every kid in your school. You're not going to be able to have a relationship with every kid in your school. Okay, and the head teacher won't be able to do that either. He will have to trust his teachers to be able to have those relationships with the pupils. And then obviously as a pupil, you have the relationships as well. Hopefully that point is coming across if you're unfamiliar with the army. In this video, we're going to focus on self and team. All right, guys, just a quick one. I'm passionate about trying to bring a lot of value here, a lot of value to this channel. And I'm speaking to so many people on a weekly basis that are going through this process and trying to develop leadership that I'm seeing these key areas as faults. And I'm trying to turn it into useful content to add value so that you can prepare better. So if this is of value, I'd really appreciate if you click like and click subscribe. It really, really helps me out. It lets me know that I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right trajectory. And if you want, you can click the bell so you're notified every time I upload a video. All right. Let's get back to the video. Okay, let's get ready to unpack the bulk of this. Let's start with the fact that everybody that I speak to is looking to be a team leader. Okay, so they're looking to go into this bracket of team leadership. This is also an area that I am absolutely passionate about. I love direct leadership. That is the boots on the ground stuff where you're with your soldiers or with, if you're outside the military, with your team. I'm really passionate about that side of leadership because you can have that direct impact, hence the name direct leadership. However, before we get there, you have to be able to exhibit self-leadership. It is impossible to jump from one to the other, right? It's as simple as that. And this is where I see people going wrong. Bear with me. I'm going to tell us a couple of stories as we go along here. AOSB is looking for leadership potential. They aren't looking for foolproof leaders yet. And what I mean by that is you don't have to have decades of leadership experience to do well at AOSB. You don't have to have any leadership experience in an official capacity. However, you have to demonstrate potential. How can you actually do that without coming into an interview and going, I've managed X, Y, and Z people? Well, they use assessments to uncover qualities. It doesn't really matter what those assessments are. They are looking to uncover the qualities, all right, to find the qualities of what that leadership looks like. The assessments, they've been in place for a long, long time, so it's unlikely they'll change anytime soon. However, if they did change, it almost doesn't really matter. It's just a function to find out the qualities that people have, right? So that's all it is. AOSB is a function to assess it. People get really bogged down in the actual tests rather than developing the competencies to pass the test in the first place. So if we think of an exam, like when you're at school, and I'll use a lot of school references throughout this, at school, you're going to study a lot for exams, but you learn, or you should at least, learn all of the content before you go and do the exam or before you start doing practice exams. AOSB is kind of the same. If you just learn to pass a Plan X or learn to pass a current affairs set of questions or whatever that is, they will probably find you out on other areas because you can't just revise to pass tests here. Yes, there is a point where you need to then be able to do practice Plan X's and whatever that comes on to and practice the actual assessments. 100% I think you should be doing that. But really what they want you to do is to understand what goes into that first so that you can then go and start honing those skills into those assessments. Where people go wrong is this self-leadership one. They are not driving themselves. I've done a whole bunch of podcasts with really experienced people recently, and one of the key themes that comes through is this sort of pursuit of excellence in your craft. Okay, and this is this personal development piece, personal professional development at this stage. It doesn't really matter, but this is developing in yourself. And that is, are you leading yourself to be fitter? Are you putting in the work to improve your fitness? Are you able to get out of bed in the morning and not make excuses to not go to the gym? If not, then probably you're not exhibiting good self-leadership. The other part comes into, whether you're interested in current affairs, I really couldn't give a monkey's. But if you're going to go down to AOSB, you need to be interested in it. Are you analysing different bits of news out there? Are you trying to fact check? Are you challenging it? Are you actually thinking about how that informs your own opinion? Are you just simply reading headlines and moving on? right? They want you to be into the detail in some of this stuff. They want you to be able to articulate it. You do not need to be a politician, right? You do not need to know lots about this. They are recruiting typically young 20-year-olds to come through. So they are looking for potential, but you have to show that you have done the work beforehand to be able to be successful here. And this is why people are falling short. If we look at other areas of AOSB, touched on fitness, and I don't just mean the bleep test or that fitness assessment, but you've got the obstacle course, you've got the command task. Can you develop your strengths, like actual physical strength and agility in those aspects? If not, then you haven't done the work required. You haven't led yourself to get better in those areas. The other parts are going to be communication. If you can't communicate confidently, then that is going to be a concern for them, because ultimately you're going to have to stand up in front of soldiers and inspire them and get them to buy into a plan that they might not want to do. You're going to have to make them follow when they might not want to follow. That is leadership in a nutshell. So being able to communicate confidently and articulate what you mean well is going to be a real challenge throughout your entire career. And it's usually what makes like the best stand out, all right, is their ability to communicate effectively. It works different for different people. So you don't have to just follow suit by what you see out there, but you do have to be putting in the work. So are you stepping out of your comfort zone to do that? Are you trying to go out there to develop those skills or not? A lot of what I do in the Future Leader Academy is basically trying to develop people's confidence in those areas. So if they aren't too confident speaking in front of other people, we give them the space to be able to do that, to practice. Now, that isn't just reciting a speech so that they can go in and pass the lecturette when they get down to AOSB. That is so that they become more confident being able to publicly speak. All right, so that is kind of what I mean here. So we've kind of hit the nail on the head early doors in this video, which is this self-leadership part. If you can't get this right, you will fail absolutely when you get to team leadership. You probably won't even get there, right? And from my corporate experience, this is where some of that goes wrong. People want to jump to team leadership before they've shown that they can drive themselves to their targets, you know, get to work on time, all of that type of stuff. All the small details, their appearance, is their kit in good order, whatever that is. They want to jump ahead. They have to be able to nail this first before they get there. Okay, so 3 things I want you to remember for self-leadership is going to be discipline. You have to be disciplined. You have to be able to motivate yourself. And actually, a lot of people then come to me, I'm just looking for motivation. I'm really firm on this. If you're wanting to be a leader, you should be able to motivate yourself. Don't look to others to externally motivate you. Think about what it is that you want and motivate yourself. And mostly we refer to that as discipline, all right? Most days I probably can't be bothered to go to the gym, but you do it anyway because that's the values that have been instilled in me in the army. It's the right thing to do, and whatever. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. Number 2 is going to be consistency over intensity. Whatever you are trying to achieve, you have to put the hours in. Now, in the age of social media, I think actually, even though I put a lot out on there, I think a lot of it's really toxic. You can see a lot of stuff on TikTok or whatever just suddenly go to loads of views and they get loads of followers, and cool, it looks like they've had this overnight success. Now, they may have, these algorithms work in a way that might be true, but actually the creators that put out stuff all the time, and actually you could probably look at my own channel here, like I don't have loads of subscribers, but I've been posting quite regularly for a long time, then actually it takes ages to try and build this. And I'm trying to build a business off the back of it, right? It takes time. The army instilled values in me that appreciates that consistency beats intensity. Okay, so you have to put the hours in to be able to get to a point where actually you can confidently speak about this stuff, or whatever that is for you. Whether that is making sure that you can go to the gym, don't worry about doing that really well for a week. And in the army, we refer to this as panic fizz. I don't want you doing loads of panic fizz. I want you doing 6 months of really good training. It's going to beat, 6 months of 4 or 5 times a week is going to beat 2 weeks of every single day. It just is. Okay, so that's one part. The next part is, if you're not into current affairs, I've used this analogy already, suddenly looking into loads of current affairs bits and pieces is actually quite daunting, because you're going to be like, I don't fucking know any of this stuff. How do I just suddenly have loads of knowledge? Well, if you start reading the paper regularly, or reading the news and getting into, doing 10 minutes before bed of actually analysing bits of text and news articles, whatever, in 3 months' time, you're going to know so much more. All right, you're going to be able to articulate your opinions because you've read all of this information, and it's just, little efforts over time that add up. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is ownership. You have to drive this. In order to lead yourself, you have to drive it. Yes, you can absolutely rely on other people's support. In fact, I would say that is fundamental to people's success. You're going to have some support network somewhere, whether that's family, friends, coaches, whatever. However, you can't rely on that solely. It has to come from you. You have to be the driving force. People can't do this for you. And that's why people get found out, right? Moving on to team leadership. This is the bit that everyone's super passionate about and wants to start doing way before they do self-leadership. But what actually is it? Well, clearly, if you're joining as an officer, it's going to be the moment that you start leading a platoon. However, you're not going to do that for at least a year, well, probably longer, depending on where you go. But if you're joining the infantry, you're not going to start leading a team full time until you have done Sandhurst and then gone to Brecon and done the platoon commander's battle course. So actually, you're probably looking at best part of 18 months before you start leading your own platoon. Does that mean team leadership starts then? Absolutely not. You're going to have loads of opportunities whilst you're at Sandhurst, and we'll look at AOSB in a second, but to lead the team. In fact, that's how you are assessed. Whether you are in a leadership position or not, you're assessed on how you can influence the platoon. Let's now look at AOSB. One of their big things is how do you influence the group? And that is what they want to see. It doesn't mean that you have to change everyone's opinion, all right? It just means when you speak, do people listen? Do they respect your opinion? Can you inject, what your enthusiasm into a task? And do people kind of want to follow you? Do they think you're a good person? So that is absolutely a bit of team leadership that is often overlooked here, is the fact that they're like, people wait. And I'm going to use a story from when I was in a corporate environment. Someone came to me, so I was in sales and I was leading the team, and there was a team of, let's say, like 8 or 10 or whatever. And someone came to me and asked for a promotion. And actually, when we dug into it, that person wasn't hitting their targets. Obviously, I knew that. But they basically said that they want to move into a sales leadership position or get management experience. And I'm all for that. I love the aspiration. But at the moment, you haven't demonstrated self-leadership, so I'm not going to put you in there. And also, don't wait to start being a leader amongst the team with a job title. You can do all of that beforehand. There are going to be differences between the actual manager or leader of a team versus someone who isn't. However, you need big characters in a successful team that might not necessarily be a leader as a job title, but that are able to help the team dig in when it gets hard and drive the team forward to success. That's why team sports give you such a good insight into that type of life, is because you can actually drive the team to success, whether you're the captain, manager or not. You have a part to play. And actually, that's why the Army likes team sports quite a lot as well. So I want to be really strong on this point. You do not have to be a leader of a team to be a leader in the team. Okay, two very different things. A lot of people that are watching it might be in their young 20s, and it might be difficult to go out and get a management job before you go and join the Army. I completely get that. So go and get a job and be a leader in the team. Okay, drive the team, be a responsible member of staff, ask for more responsibility, turn up, show up, drive yourself, and then start trying to drive others in the team. All right. And you will learn a lot from that process. Something I'm really, really passionate about, hopefully that's coming across, is, don't wait to become a leader to be a leader. In fact, the best way to become a leader, all right, the best way to prove to your boss that you want that job is to start being a leader amongst the team. All right. Demonstrate those leadership qualities. And it's going to be much easier to promote someone that's demonstrating it than that isn't, right? That's just fact. And going back to my own story, that person didn't promote. Whereas if they had started doing all of that, they might have. So in this video, we've looked at the different levels of leadership. We've looked at self in detail. We've looked at team in detail. Hopefully, one of the key points that's coming away is if you are joining the military as an officer, you need to be passionate about leadership. Okay, just in general. I will get phone calls quite often from people, and they will say to me that they want to join the Army as an officer, but they are debating, whether they should just get a trade or, is it worthwhile? What jobs are open to you after being an officer? And the answer is your trade is leadership. So if you want to go down a leadership route for the rest of your life, join as an officer. It doesn't mean that you have to do that after a career in the Army, obviously. But leadership is your trade. That's your bread and butter. You might then specialize in engineering. You might then specialize in logistics, whatever the fuck it is. But actually your trade is leadership. So if there's any parents watching this, because frequently I'll have messages from parents saying, I'm not quite sure if this is the best thing for my son or daughter. Well, actually the best thing if they're joining as an officer is if they're passionate about leadership, then it's the correct choice. If you take all of this into account and you start demonstrating those values and responsibilities from now on, this will massively increase your chances at AOSB because they will be able to uncover those qualities. Remember, don't train just to pass the tests. In fact, if you're doing that, I would say your bar is way too low. We're looking for people, the Army slogan, be the best. We're looking for people, or the Army is looking for people that want to go beyond that. It doesn't mean that you have to be at the very front of everything and the best, right? Obviously, most people aren't going to be able to do that, but you should be striving to be better. Don't just settle for the bare minimum. All right. That is it for this week's video. Hopefully that has been useful. I'm going to bring some more leadership pieces because I think it's really important. And all of this stuff is from things that I'm seeing, working with people, chatting to people. I mean, we are literally spending so much time speaking to people that are going through the process that I can see real key trends on where it's going wrong for some people. And I'm trying to turn that into content to actually be useful for you guys. So if this is useful, I would really appreciate if you could click like, if you could subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps me out. And if you like this stuff, you can click the bell so you're notified every time I upload a video. That is it for this week's video. I will see you next week with a brand new video in a bit.